So are you really a professional speaker? This is actually based off one of the questions that was asked by one of our clients in the last couple of weeks about what qualifies somebody to be able to call themselves a professional speaker. And I kind of, every time I hear that question or every time I hear someone actually claim that they're a professional speaker when they're not, I kind of want to get on my soapbox and get a bit ranty. So I thought the best thing to do was to not get ranty, but actually wrap this up in two sections that I want to walk you through. So some of you who are following us on social platforms would have already seen a baseline answer to this question, but I want to walk you through what actually qualifies somebody as a professional speaker, and then also talk to you a little bit about the landscape of professional speaking from a global perspective and association perspective. So there's two parts, as I said. I want to kick off with answering the question, what qualifies somebody to call themselves a professional speaker? Well, if you look around the world, you would think nothing, right? You would think that anybody who claims that they can speak on any platform or any stage has the right to call themselves a professional speaker. But there are some qualifications and there are some benchmarks to reach. And so in Australia, in reality, there's a general rule of thumb. So to join the Professional Speakers Association of Australia, which I'll talk about later in this segment about how the global associations play out, to become a professional member of Professional Speakers Australia, you have to have generated $50,000 in speaking related revenue, right? So you cannot actually become a professional member until you've been paid at least $50,000 in speaking related or speaking generated revenue. Now, that is also reflected across the board in most countries where there are professional speaking associations. So in the USA, it used to be a lot higher, but now it is that you have to have presented 20 or more paid presentations of speeches to audience of at least 15 or more, and to have been paid at least $25,000 US in speaking fees in a 12-month period. So the important distinction there is in the Australian Association, that $50,000 revenue that you need to become a professional member can be generated over a number of years. In the US, your first benchmark to becoming a professional speaker is that you have generated $25,000 in fee revenue within the 12-month period prior to applying. So really, really important distinctions. But if we step away for a moment from that, most people, including myself, will tell you that you must have been paid consistently for speaking, and have a general rule of thumb for most of us that there's been at least 10 gigs or engagements under your belt where you've been paid at least 5K or more, which kind of lines up with both the US and the Australian benchmark for professional speaking. And until you've actually done that 10 times over, being paid for it, you also don't understand a lot of nuances and the impacts and the changes that you need to make to your craft. So that's one of the general benchmarks. Keynote and professional speaking as a category is seen as an average 80% of your revenue is generated through speaking related fees. And what I mean by that, so as a category, so for people to call themselves a professional speaker or a keynote speaker, and that is their only thing that they do, their main thing that they do, that means that 80% of their revenue is generated through that. So a professional speaker can still be a professional speaker and have a business running and have other profile things running and have other interests running. But generally speaking, to call yourself a professional speaker as a business identity, it means about 80% of your revenue is generated through speaking related revenue. Now, what do we mean by speaking related revenue? Well, in Australia, it's speaking fees, it's facilitation and workshop fees where there are at least 6 participants paying to participate at full rate, and it is 100% your own IP. And in Australia as well, it can be also sales generated within 24 hours of a speaking engagement. For example, courses, programs, consulting projects. So if something happens within 24 hours of your speaking engagement that drives hard revenue into your business in that period of time, some of that revenue can also be considered. This becomes really important when you're bumping up to other levels. Okay, so in the US, I just spoke about is paid. You've been paid to present 20 or more times to audiences of 15 or more and paid at least $25,000 in fees. Now that paid for 20 or more presentations can actually be workshops, so facilitation, as well as speaking from stages, but you must have at least 15 people in your audience. So really, really important distinctions, right? But I think if you're actually going to call yourself a professional speaker and you're not being paid to speak on average at least once a month, at least 5K, and earning six figures through your speaking, then actually, quite frankly, you're just a speaker, and there is nothing wrong with that. So we talk all the time in our programs about what are the levels of speaking. And there is, a lot of people call themselves a keynote speaker before they actually are, because they don't understand what it is. So let's give a quick rundown of that. So you can be just a speaker, and you can make an incredible living out of being just a speaker. And by just a speaker, I mean, you might be an expert business builder. So you're using speaking to drive revenue into a business. You might be a charity or movement creator and accelerator. So you're using it to actually drive awareness. So you can be an incredibly good speaker, but we're speaking as part of your ecosystem, I guess. It's also, even on the way to becoming a professional speaker and a keynote speaker, it is also where you start. You start as a program speaker, you start as a speaker, and there is nothing wrong with being a speaker, right? And especially if it works for you, and especially if it drives revenue for you, and especially if it gives profile for you, and especially if it builds what it is that you want to build. You don't have to be a professional speaker, and you don't have to be a keynote speaker to have success as a speaker. Right. So the next category obviously is professional speaking. And this is for those that actually want that recognition and want that ability to put that line in the sand and say, I'm a professional speaker. So next is a professional speaker, which I've just run through. And then the differentiators are varied, but the main one is keynote speaker. So a lot of people call themselves keynote speaker before they are. So if you are calling yourself a keynote speaker and you've only done it once or twice, then you're not a keynote speaker. If you're calling yourself a keynote speaker, you've never been paid for it, then you're not a keynote speaker. If you're calling yourself a keynote speaker and you've never spoken in front of big audiences, then you're not a keynote speaker. So a keynote speaker has a very defined function. A keynote speaker is the person who opens or closes a conference, or opens and closes a program, or is the only engagement or only speaker on a program where they're like a hero speaker. So a gala dinner, a fundraiser, a major event, right? And the whole idea is that a keynote speaker, their skill and their craft is so deep that they can open and set the tone for an entire conference program, or as a closing keynote speaker, they can really bring it home and leave people exactly where the conference organizers want them to be. So keynote speaking is a craft build. It is something that you know when you're in the presence of a great keynote speaker, and it is something that is aspirational. You should not call yourself that until you are that. Right. Now, what I want everybody to walk away with from this is that whatever level of speaking you're at is more than okay. You can be a speaker your entire life and have an amazing speaking life. You can be a conference speaker your entire life and have an amazing speaking life. You can be a professional speaker your entire life and have an amazing speaking life. You can become a keynote speaker and do that for the rest of your life and have an amazing speaking life. The categories and the levels do not determine what your speaking life gives you. But you do need to be aware of how it plays out and where you should actually be to call yourself those particular categories. Because it may not matter in your marketing, and it may not matter in your community, and it may not matter in your clients. But as you start getting booked by people who are in bureaus, who are professional conference organizers, who are event managers and event owners, they might be in corporate, they might be sitting outside an agency and bureau type land. They will have certain expectations based on how you call yourself and categorize yourself. Now, if you say you call yourself a keynote speaker and it's actually still aspirational and you do land a keynote gig, but then on the day of delivery, you don't land the keynote, you're done and out, right? So own and be proud of whatever level of speaking you're at. Own and be proud of whatever category of speaking you are excelling in, and just see where it takes you. Don't get caught up on something that's aspirational, right? Don't get caught up on trying to be something you're not. This is not somewhere where you can fake it till you make it. This is a true craft that is part of a global industry. Okay. So speaking of global industries, let's talk about that. So I am a member of Professional Speakers Australia, and many of my clients, one of the first things that we're going to do if they want to become professional speakers is get them to a stage where they can move from affiliate membership to professional membership of Professional Speakers Australia. That membership is part of my professional development. So Professional Speakers Australia really doubles down on building the business of speaking. It is part of a global federation. So there is Professional Speakers Australia, there is Professional Speakers Association of New Zealand, there is the APSS in Asia, there is a Professional Speaking Association in the UK, there is National Speakers Association in the USA, there is one in Canada. There's actually 17 professional speaking associations around the world that are also affiliated with the Global Speakers Federation. Now, the Global Speakers Federation does not have individual members. Its members are these associations. So by being a member of the Professional Speakers Association of Australia, I am part of the Global Speakers Federation. So the Global Speakers Federation is a global body of incredibly experienced, next level, out of this world speaking professionals, and they help to foster the continual improvement and professionalization of speaking as a craft and as an industry. They do some phenomenal things. So that is from a global perspective. Then also too, at a global perspective, some of the very experienced GSF members and executive leaders also created what's called the VSAI, which is the Virtual Speakers Association International. So they spun that up during COVID. It's been really effective. And in actual point of fact, they're hosting a conference in Bali next year. Now let's talk about conferences. Every single association around the world has conferences, and they're amazing. The Australian conference is really good. It's actually quite intimate, and so you really get to experience and get up close and personal to some of our best speakers. So every year we have a conference. Next year it will be in Perth in March in 2024, and I believe it's about 3/4 sold out already. Now, you don't have to be a member to go to that, so even if you're not a member yet, or you're wondering whether it's for you, it's actually worth investing in. We then have the conferences that are always on my radar. Is we then have NSA, National Speakers Association in America. We have the Influence Conference. So they have a winter conference and a summer conference. Their summer conference is the big one. It is known as the best professional speaking conference in the world. It is 4 days, sometimes 5 days of an incredible program of both the caliber and quality of speakers, the caliber and quality of education, the caliber and quality of the breakouts, the social things that go on, the hallway conversations that happen, the things that happen around it. It is a formidable conference. It's one of those ones where I literally know that I need to forego any chance of normal sleep routines while I'm there. It is one of the best conferences in the world for speaking, and I highly recommend you put it on your radar to attend at least once. Next year, 2024, in the first week of August, is in Denver, Colorado. Which is going to be really interesting and amazing because the last major international conference prior to COVID in 2019 was at the same location. So that's going to be a really powerful and quite, I guess, meaningful to a lot of people. And then the Global Speakers Federation every 2 years run the Global Speakers Summit. Now that is an incredible conference. Again, actually a bit more boutique. You can find yourself having lunch with some of the most highly paid speakers in the world and just being able to have a conversation with them. It's incredible atmosphere. So next year is the rotation for the GSS, the Global Speakers Summit. It is in Bali in September. Now, as of this stage, it is completely sold out and has been for about the last 4 or 5 months. I do believe that they're looking at trying to extend their or expand the venue that they've got. But if they can't, then there won't be any more tickets available. I am going. I'm very excited about that one. It's one of my favorite conferences. So the next one after that will be 2026. But stay tuned. Follow Global Speakers Federation, and they will announce if they're actually able to expand the numbers for that. Now, I did mention that before because it's actually been hosted by the Virtual Speakers Association International. One of the things that I want you to understand is that probably seems like a lot of layers. There's not just the professional speaking associations, although they're formidable. And for a lot of people, it ends up building a global family for them because it's kind of like being amongst people who are the same as you. There's also in Australia, there's the Australian Institute of Training and Development, which if you're more a workshop facilitator and speaker from that perspective is actually a really vibrant organization and really has a lot of benefit as well to being a part of. And there are the equivalents of that in both the UK and the US. And then, of course, I'm going to touch on Toastmasters, which is available globally. Now, Toastmasters is interesting because if any of you have watched Public Speaking Championships, they've come through the Toastmasters ranks. Some of them are absolutely mind-blowingly brilliant. I have some issues with Toastmasters because in 84 years of running the World Public Speaking Championships, 6 women have won in that 84 years. And I think those numbers need to change. The other thing is as well, until you get to those kind of national and international competition standards, it's very restrictive and it's not as contemporary as I would like my speakers to be taught and be immersed in the craft of speaking. It is amazing for getting your confidence. It is amazing for having to speak to a structure. It is amazing for having to get up on your feet. And for a lot of people, it's also amazing for creating networks. It's not necessarily what I think is going to make you a world-class speaker when you consider the amount of Toastmaster clubs around the world and the ones who actually make it into these competitions. I'm not quite sure that it's actually really bringing that contemporary edge that we need now as speakers with our understanding of psychology, our understanding of neuroscience, our understanding of neurolinguistics, our understanding of, after COVID, of virtual delivery and augmented delivery. We've got people now speaking in the metaverse. Like there's a conference coming up at the end of this year that I'm aware of where there's 4 days and 25 speakers and it's all in the metaverse, right? In a virtual reality environment. So whilst Toastmasters is great for baseline skill, I don't think they're actually incorporating enough of the contemporary applications that we need. But by all means, if it's filling a need for you and you feel connected and it's getting you confidence at the start of your journey, then by all means go there. But do look to expand your networks and your participation out to the professional speaking associations around the world through both chapter meetings, national conferences and international conferences, if you're truly serious about increasing your craft of speaking. So I hope that that's helped walk you through a bit of the landscape, both from how are you really a professional speaker through to how the global landscape plays out from an association perspective. My motto has always been, if you're going to be part of an industry, be part of an industry. So if you really do believe that this is part of your future, that speaking is really a big part of your future, no matter how you're going to use it, then I would highly recommend that you find somewhere that you can call home within one of these associations or organizations, because if you want success in it, you need to be part of it. Okay. So let me know if there's anything else you'd like to know, either through contacting us or reaching out to us, or if you're actually watching this through one of our social platforms, just drop us questions in the comments.